Well, autism was defined by a guy named Dr. Leo Kanner in the 40s, and he had a very narrow definition of what autism was. It's people very, very self-focused. Word comes from auto, self, in Greek, and they're very focused. They don't, not really paying attention to the outside world. They generally are non-communicative. They're nonverbal. They don't like being touched, and things like that. Asperger's syndrome is named for Hans Asperger, who was working in, I think it was in Austria, or maybe it was in the United States at the time. And he said, oh, I have these kids who have autism-like symptoms, but they can be verbal and they can have some measure of social interaction and so on and so forth. But nobody really knew about his study until like 50 years later or something in the 90s, because there were lots of people saying, well, they went to get their kid diagnosed, and the doctor said, well, they're kind of autistic, but not really, maybe they'll grow it or something, and they didn't know what was going on. So a lot of people were misdiagnosed or got no treatment, or worse, they were diagnosed as schizophrenic and, just bombed out on drugs, which did them no good. And then when Asperger's came about, people went, oh, this is it. This is people who are on a spectrum of autism, people who are severe to the point of not being able to be dealt with, handle anything at all, to people like myself who can more or less get along in the world.
Because you're perfectly fine doing things, but you don't, is it harder to relate to people or for people to relate to you?
Yes.
I love you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. No, it is very hard. Virtually everybody that I've met with the autism community have talked about, they said the difficulty of dealing with social interactions is very, very hard. It's very stressful. You never know what you're going to say. I kind of pinned it down. I said, what the autistic person lacks is the ability of what I call social improvisation. When you talk to someone, it's like you give them a melody, and they take the melody and they change a little bit and they hand it back to you. And there's like a jazz session. That's what a conversation's like. But when someone who's autistic, they're tone deaf. And so you give them a melody and they go, yes, and they give the melody back to you and you go, I changed it. And they go, yes, and they give you the same melody, and they're like, and you're confused, and the other person, what am I doing wrong? We don't realize that there's supposed to be some improvisation there, and they're unable to communicate.
Oh my gosh, you are so amazing to put that in words like that.
Yeah.
Did you guys hear? I mean, I hope that everybody's sucking that down. That is absolutely.
I want to use it.
Yeah, phenomenal, because.
It's true though that it took me a long time to come up with that. Though,
and here's the thing: is you're not necessarily doing it wrong. You just sing it different.
That's right.
We think we own the conversation, and we think that we own the melody, and what we have done through culture for eons is locked people like yourself out of the choir because you sang differently.
Well, when you sing off key or you only know one melody, it's hard to be in a choir. So they go, well, you're not able to be in the choir, and so you sit off to the side going, I don't know what I did wrong. I can sing perfectly fine. I don't know what the problem is. And very often in a conversation, people are left puzzled, and I go, okay, they had that weird puzzled look like, well, look at the time, gotta go, and then I wonder, what did I say wrong? So every conversation is like walking to a minefield. You don't know whether you're going to step on something and it's going to blow up in your face. So imagine living like that every day.
And that's what you do?
Yes.
Is it lonely?
It's very frustrating, yeah. It's very lonely. It's hard to make friends. The people I do know say, oh, you're the most sociable person I know. I go, I know you, and I now know your melody. In other words, I know their music, so I can accommodate that. But with total strangers, it's like, it's paralyzing, for a lot of people with autism. They go, and that's why they're like, they don't know what to say because they're afraid they're going to say the wrong thing, which invariably happens.
So what can the I don't know,
the neuronormals.
Huh?
The neuronormals.
The neuronormals, you don't know me that well. My wife would say there's not much neuronormal about me. But what are the neuronormals? What can we do to make it better for people such as yourself?
That's a good question. I think a lot of it is just being aware that people with autism often sound like they're being blunt or tactless, or they, sort of take over a conversation. And it's perfectly, one of the single biggest complaint among autistics is, why don't these people just say what they mean? because there's so much subtlety in communication.
Right.
And just realize, okay, this person's autistic, that means they're not always going to get something. They're not necessarily getting a metaphor, excuse me, a metaphor. They won't necessarily understand subtle social cues, wherever those are. Or that they will seem tactless, but they're not. They're being blunt because they don't have that filter of I have to be discreet or I have to say this in a subtle way. And so when you're dealing with someone who's autistic, just go, well, that was kind of tacky. Well, no, that's just the way they are. It's fine.